One of the most talked about incidents at the Border Gavaskar Trophy was the drama surrounding Sam Constas, the Australian teenager who made all the headlines with his debut in the fourth test. He had an eventful start to his career. The youngster was involved in 2 on-field spats with 2 of the biggest names in Indian cricket, world cricket, in fact, Virat Kohli and Jasprit Bumrah. And the teenager has finally broken his silence on the whole drama. The 19-year-old batting sensation was part of 2 of the most controversial moments in the series. The first one, of course, was in Melbourne against Virat Kohli, and the second was against Jasprit Bumrah in Sydney in that last test. And while Kohli was found guilty for the mid-pitch bump with Sam Constas at the MCG and was punished by the ICC, the war of words against Bumrah on day 1 of that final test at Sydney turned into a bit of an ugly episode. And while everyone gave their inputs on the Bumrah-Constas fight, the Aussie batter has finally spoken out, accepting he'd made a mistake.
With me being new into the team, I thought, let's try put a bit of pressure. I thought that was the best method at that time. Maybe it was a bit too much. If that happened again, maybe I wouldn't have said anything.
But there is no room for second chances, not when you're playing international cricket. And Constas didn't just accept his mistake, but he also feels that he was responsible for what followed right after. The teenager has taken the blame for Usman Khawaja's dismissal and even praised Jasprit Bumrah.
I didn't get too fazed. Unfortunately, Uzi got out. I was trying to waste a little bit of time there, so they don't get another over. It was probably my fault, but he had the last laugh. Obviously, he is world class, and he took 32 wickets in the series.
While it's nice that Constas is owing up to his mistake, what his statement does is it rubbishes his own coach's claims. Andrew McDonald, the Australian head coach, had called the gesture by the Indian team there at that moment very intimidating, even bringing in Constas' headspace into the picture.
My conversation to him was just around whether he's okay. Clearly, the way that India celebrated was quite intimidating. To have an opposition obviously swarm the non-striker like that, we've got a duty care to our player to make sure he's okay and in a headspace to go out the next day and perform.
The Aussie coach probably needed a reminder that Constas wasn't the innocent one in the whole episode. Sure, he was taken aback when Virat Kohli bumped into him at the MCG, but at Sydney, Constas himself ruffled some feathers, which he has now taken ownership of. India's reaction was in retaliation to Constas' behavior, and they made Constas realized that in as many words.
It's a tough sport played by tough men. You can't be that soft, as simple as it can get. I don't think there was anything intimidating about it. He had no right to be talking to Jasprit Bumrah when Usman Khawaja was taking time.
And it wasn't just this incident that riled up the Indians. In the last 2 test matches, the Aussie batter was seen hyping up the Aussie crowd. He was chirpy on the field. And the final nail in the coffin was the exchange with Bumrah, of course. So clearly the teenager was doing his best to try and get under the skin of the Indian players, which is part of the sport. It's in fact part of the Aussie psyche. But if that's how you want to play it, you have got to know how to take it too. Which is the reason why even former Aussie cricketer Brad Hogg slammed the Aussie team for their statement during the Sydney Test.
The coach should not be talking about the Indian intimidation. The coach should be talking to his player about how he is going to handle the retaliation from the opposition. If you want to give it out, you've got to take it back as well.
Constas, in fact, even spoke about his fan moment meeting Virat Kohli. He called him his idol and said the mid-pitch collision was all in the past. So the teenager is not too bothered about all this. Just another day for him. Maybe the rest of his team in the Australian camp, the media, fans and coaches should realize it too, because cricket is a tough sport. If you give out some heat, you might as well expect that in equal measure.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on First Post.